Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast Network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast.
Ozcast.
Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
Wavelength.
The real issue with data privacy is who's collecting your data behind the scenes, so in the back end of it, and who is that being shared with.
Sparking the combos about Adelaide.
It's every woman's choice. If they choose to have an abortion, then so be it.
You should be having.
These issues need to be properly investigated, and we need to make sure that LGBTIQ people are supported to be who they are.
On Fresh 92.7.
Welcome to Wavelength, sparking the convos about Adelaide you should be having. I'm your host, David, and tonight I am joined by Jamie. Long time no see.
Hello, my darling. How are you?
I'm doing wonderfully on this sexy, sexy Monday.
It is a sexy Monday. You know what? We've got a sexy show, and I think that everyone deserves a sexy Monday today.
I know last week was so not sexy, and now we're getting back into... It's always the end of the year on Wavelengths. We always end up doing a sexy show.
Yeah, I think people need a little bit of morale. You know, it's been a weird week, and we just need that little vamp up. You know, it's nearly the end of the year. Let's start getting sexy.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. This week on Wavelength, we're getting hot and steamy in the studio. Have you ever heard of the Japanese rope bondage practice called Shibari? Well, you're going to.
We'll also be letting you know everything you need to know about the coronavirus. But next, we're discussing the ridiculous body image standards men have to deal with every day. You're listening to Fresh.
Wavelength.
Welcome back to Wavelength, sparking the convos about Adelaide you should be having. So this week is a pretty sexy show, to be honest. Our first story for the evening is about male body image and how Hollywood and Instagram is delivering us dudes with some very unattainable bodies.
Yeah, that's right. To find out how it actually affects dudes, I spoke with Kelvin and Dan, two male strippers.
Ooh.
I know.
Wavelength on Fresh 92.7.
Over the last few years, superhero movies have become incredibly popular. From this, however, there's been a growing trend in men of not thinking that they're muscly enough, and this has been exacerbated by the industry when you consider that not even Henry Cavill or Hugh Jackman look as ripped as they do on the big screen. These actors often go on very strict diets and even reduce their water intake in the lead up to topless shoots. I spoke with Kelvin and Dan, two male strippers, on their issue with body dysmorphia. Kelvin, Dan, what have you seen in the industry when it comes to body dysmorphia?
Daniel here. So I've been a PT and Kelvin himself is a PT also. Things that you see, a lot of the time, the body dysmorphia is obviously a big thing. And I think a lot of us boys, if you've ever spoken to any of the guys that I work with, they don't see themselves as good as other people do is probably the nicest way of putting it, the most delicate way. We look at the other guys and idolise things that we see in each other more so than ourselves. But as PTs, we see it with pro bodybuilders, amateur bodybuilders. We've got unhealthy habits that creep into a healthy line of work where it ends up being bad dieting techniques, and I'm probably known for that, where you'll eat very little calories some days and just to make sure you can maintain good shape for when you take your shirt off on the weekend for work. And on to what Daniel was saying, body dysmorphia, I feel like, is quite rife within our industry. As Daniel was saying, like, we all look at each other and pick out features on each other and go, well, I wish I was like that. But the other person's doing the same back to us. Daniel, what's expected of us to be able to take our shirts off? It's expected. You're meant to have ripped six-pack and rippling muscles and all the rest of it, and that's what we perceive and people perceive. So quite often there'll be guys that want to go to it that have trained their ass off, but they don't feel like they're good enough to take their shirt off. And I've seen guys absolutely jacked doing push-ups in the toilets before they come out because they don't have the confidence to walk out on the floor in front of anyone until they look pumped up, or they don't eat food for 2 days before, whole day before.
Now, does this happen at all? I actually used to be an amateur boxer, and some of the members of the club, I only did it once because I felt like absolute trash afterwards. We would cut water before a fight so that you could drop those extra couple of kilos before a weigh-in. Does that at all happen in your industry?
Daniel here, I'll go into mine. I actually put myself in renal failure a couple of years ago. That's when you pee blood for a couple of weeks. So that was water loading, but extreme water loading, and because what we're trying to do is look as lean as you can for your photos, which is what you get booked from. So if you have decent enough photos, that's what people are going to look at when they select you. So you want to be in tip-top shape. So what I did, water loaded and then drank only vodka for the day before and the day off, which dehydrates you even more. When I came out of that, my body wasn't in good shape and struggled to recover. So it's it is an extreme, something I've learnt from, and I don't recreate now. Actually, Kelvin and myself are actually off the grog at the moment. We've tried to clean up our lives and our mental health. So alcohol was the number one. Alcohol, drugs, and all the rest of it all gone, and just water and coffee.
That's really impressive, and I want to commend you guys for doing that. It's a very big and hard step to make. Now, Dan, when you consider that even the Henry Cavills of the world and yourselves go through these strict regimens, and your heavy social media presence, how does that affect body dysmorphia for the general population? You know, this idea that in order to be attractive, you have to have this certain level of muscle tone.
Daniel here. I'll answer that one. So I think you need to realise what you see on social media, what you see in the media is obviously people putting their best foot forward, and they're edited photos. No one ever looks like their photos, and that's probably, we try to stay as true as we can to our photos, but at the end of the day, you're putting out a lot of those images with Henry Cavill, with all of those guys. They'll be heavily edited. And the tricks of the trade, they like shade in your abs, they shade in everything to make you look better than you are, and it does create that unrealistic expectation.
Kelvin here, yeah, saying what Dan was saying as well. With the idea that people aren't exactly looking exactly like their photos, it's kind of like a vicious cycle in a way, because people look at them and go, I want to be like that, but it's kind of like trying to attain the unachievable. It's more about being happy with who you are and being comfortable with who you are, where you're going to really find best results and be happy.
So now that you two have started sort of that process in taking your mental health and your physical health into your own hands, what would you say is the first step to accepting your body type and being comfortable with who you are, and sort of maybe not disregarding, I want to get fitter, I want to get stronger, but sort of keeping it within that healthy level of fitness goals and ideals?
I'll let you speak, Kelvin.
Yeah. I think probably the first step into moving towards that is based upon mental health. You can work as hard as you want on your body for as long as you can to achieve those unachievable results that you see. But at the end of the day, until you work on your mindset and your mental health, you're never going to be happy with what you get, ever. And that there's people out there that never, ever are happy enough. So they go to extreme lengths to achieve these bodies. And at the end of the day, they start looking grotesque, or they're not looking proportionate, or they're just chasing these unachievable goals. So yeah, like I said, it comes down to mental health and really changing your mindset to be happy with who you are.
And Daniel, I'll touch on that again. Like Kelvin sitting here, he's probably at about 5% body fat and 100 plus kilos. The guy's jacked and ripped. And up until recently, I'll be talking to him and he didn't like his body. And I just sit there looking at him like, you have road maps all over your arms and your legs. You like literally running on no body fat percentage whatsoever. What don't you like? And realise a lot of the other guys don't like their body, and it's more, it's a mindset that they need to change. It's something that you need to change within yourself. So positive talk and the things like that, the techniques you taught, where you look at yourself and you find positive things in the mirror rather than tearing yourself down and telling everyone else that they're doing great. Look at yourself and try and build yourself up as well. I think that's probably the biggest thing that we're trying to get ourselves to do, and the others to do as well. And that's probably the biggest change that with the body dysmorphia that people need to do. And I know the hard part is letting go of the idea of the instant you relax, your body's going to go and you're not going to look good. And that's when if you've tied everything of your being to how you look, then you're going to have issues. You have to have more, be more, and create more. So it's not just about your body. Otherwise, then that's all you have to offer. And if you're letting your body slip, then that's when your mental health is going to slip also.
Is there anything else that you just want to touch on before we go when it comes to mental health or body dysmorphia?
What we've learned, especially, we've learned quite a lot over the last couple months, and just saying this, like, if anyone's out there that's obviously listening that's feeling like they don't feel good about themselves or don't feel like they look good, find someone you trust and you're close to have a chat about it, because there's always an option and there's always a way to fix things. And like I said earlier, it's not about working on your body as hard as you can to get where you want to be. It's more so working on your mindset and working on your mental health, and everything else will sort of flow on from that. And once you sort of cross all your T's, dot all your I's in that aspect, mental health and your body, you'll start to see that your approach to life and yourself will improve and be better. And Daniel also.
Yeah. I'll go on. I'll beat Kelvin's drum a little bit here. He's actually made some leaps and bounds in these last few months. For someone who was drinking a lot, he's cut out complete alcohol. He's getting all the help he needs. He's doing all the things, ticking all the boxes. But that's the thing. If you've got a support network, make sure reach out to friends. The hardest thing for guys is to talk to other guys about how they feel, and it doesn't mean that you're less of a man having feelings. That's something that I've had to come to terms with, and Kelvin's a military background, so it's something he's had to really dig down and understand. So having feelings doesn't mean you're less of a man, and you can talk to your mates. Just talk to your mates about whatever's going on and be there for your mates. And when you start to realise, talking to your mates, you realise half your mates have got the same thoughts and the same things that you've got as well.
Wavelength, sparking the convos about Adelaide you should be having on Fresh 92.7.
That there was Arch chatting with two male strippers from Adelaide, Kelvin and Dan, about male body dysmorphia and I guess how they have dealt with that in the past. And clearly it's very shocking, the types of things that they go through.
Yeah, it's just really, really crazy to see just how far people push it, going to extreme health conditions in order to get this like standard of the perfect body. These men are giving themselves no water for days on end. They're starving themselves. They're, going to extreme measures of just taking drugs and alcohol in to make sure they've got that shredded body look.
Yeah.
It's really scary. And, one of the guys said that he's getting renal failure, which is just
terrifying.
It's so terrifying. And it's a standard that not very many people talk about.
Totally.
Especially in terms of like male body standards. We talk a lot about it more openly with females.
Definitely. It's obviously a hot topic with women, but I think that the problem with male body image is like, it's not really, people don't really consider it to really impact men. I don't think men are very open about their feelings about their body a lot of the time and probably just will never even consider telling somebody about it in the first place.
And even, like males with eating disorders are still just as valid as females with eating disorders as well. And there needs to be a more open space for men to talk about this and get support when they need it.
Yeah, and especially you can see that people who do work in, I guess, the stripping industry, of course they're going to go through those types of problems. It would be awful, like having to put yourself out there every day. And like your job is your body.
Your job is to, have a certain standard of how you look. Like your job is to look shredded and like look really hot. So it would be really hard to uphold those standards all the time.
Especially with Instagram too. Like they're saying none of those things are real. It's all edited. You don't get the real image. But I mean, you were telling me about this, the Rihanna Fenty show.
Oh, yes. Okay. So in counterbalance to this story, a really beautiful example of
positive body image.
Yeah, positive body image. So Rihanna released a show. It was her Rihanna Fenty Savage show this year. Pretty sure you can watch it on Stan. And it was really amazing because she had a really diverse range of models, both men and women, of like all different races, all different sizes. And you saw like male plus size models for the first time that I've ever seen in a fashion show.
Yeah.
And it just kind of like broke through the glass ceiling of what our standards for both men and women in the model industry should be. It was incredible. And these dudes were rocking it.
Yeah, it's so awesome. Such a good breath of fresh air from the bloody Victoria's Secret shows.
Oh my God. It
less
just
diverse thing ever.
smashes Victoria's Secret show out of the park. Everyone should check it out if you have a couple of minutes, and the choreography is amazing.
Yeah, amazing story there, Arch. Anyway, coming up after the break, we'll be cracking into our main story of the evening about Japanese rope bondage. Very, very sexy show this evening.
Ooh.
Anyway, you're listening to Wavelength on Fresh 92.7.
Wavelength.
Welcome back to Wavelength with David and Jamie this evening, sparking the conversations about Adelaide you should be having. Now, Jamie, this next story was one of your ideas, actually. Japanese rope bondage.
Yes.
Pretty kinky.
It's kinky. It's a bit of a saucy one this week.
It is. What got you interested in this?
So I actually saw it when I was in Germany last year, and I went to this huge club, and it's a famous sex club. It's called the Kit Kat Club.
Yeah.
And I walked in, and there was actually a lady like hung from the ceiling, covered in rope. And I was kind of watching for a while, and it turned out to be a full art form called Shibari. I'd never seen it before, so I did a little bit of research and found that there's an entire subsection of BDSM and bondage called Shibari, but it's so much more than that.
Yeah.
So we got Adrian to look at this story, which is pretty exciting.
We did, and like we said before, very, very sexy show. If you've got kids in the car, you might Maybe you want to turn it down for
Just
about
turn it down a little
3-4
bit.
minutes.
Yeah.
Anyway, here's Adrian speaking with Shane from Shibari Adelaide, all about the kinky hobby that's got Adelaideans all tied up.
Wavelength on Fresh 92.7.
If 2020 has got you thinking about starting new things or picking up a new hobby, maybe Shibari is just what you're looking for. This Japanese art form is growing in popularity rapidly across the world, and Adelaide is no exception. I spoke to Shane, who teaches at Shibari Adelaide after learning it from Shibari Masters in Japan. He explained to me what is this kinky practice actually and how his venue operates.
Yeah, so Shibari is a Japanese art form, uses rope to do bondage. You ties people up in different shapes, using rope to make different sensations, cause different emotions in someone, make aesthetically pleasing shapes depending on who's tying and who's got the eye. That changes the looks of it. It's essentially Shibari translates to tie. Probably, in my regard, a more accurate name for it would be Kimbaku, which loosely translates into using the ropes to tie with feeling. So using them to tie, but also with emotion. Yeah, Shibari is used by the samurai to tie up prisoners and that kind of thing. It was known back then more as a martial art.
Interesting.
Hojo Jitsu. So it all stems from the martial art that the samurais used to use to capture prisoners and torture prisoners and those kind of things. Now, I asked my teacher in Japan how it got from the samurai to tying up people and that kind of thing, and he just went, kinky Japanese man.
Is it actually a fetish, or can you consider it, or do people consider it to be an art form?
Oh, very, very much so. Particularly lately, it's got so many sides of it. Rope can be pretty much what you want it to be. There are a lot of people use it for just art, purely art. There are people who do like art installations. They'll tie all these big decorative things, and then they'll put on like an hour, 2 hour plus performance and installation in art galleries where they'll tie someone up, make pretty aesthetic shapes, all that kind of thing. And then there are the people that like to learn it just to take home and use and enjoy with themselves.
Absolutely.
It really depends on the person and on the couple, on their dynamic, and it changes like each time people tie. It can be one day it can be something else, the other it can be really artistic, or it can be really on the fetish side. So like you look at, there's other forms that I kind of feel are similar-ish type things like aerial silks, lyra, pole dancing, those kind of things. They used to be looked at as a bit of taboo kind of things like years ago, and now they're really socially acceptable and everywhere. There are displays where people put on magnificent shows with aerial silks and absolutely stunning lyra performances. And to me, rope is one of those things where I really feel like Shibari will, in a number of years' time, it will be something that people are taking, like everyone's going out on a weekend to watch this amazing Shibari performance.
Little Adelaide has now a venue where you can go practice it. You run this venue. What does your venue entail?
So I'm part of a team at Shibari Adelaide. We're a Shibari studio venue. We teach classes weekly, so we have Tuesday night classes for beginners and intermediates, and then we have our advanced students on another night on the Wednesday, and then we do like other events, so performance night, rope social night, and then the odd other sort of events here and there. We have probably on a night on average about 30 to 40 students. We don't put any more than that in at all, and as you go up in skill level, we lower the numbers in class on purpose, because obviously as things get more detailed, the risks go up. We can't keep an eye on everyone as what we need to, so to make sure everything stays safe, we keep the numbers down to a manageable level.
Is there any particular demographic that it's more predominant in the people you see coming in?
Yeah, there's a big wide of demographic people coming in. We've got everything from people who are in their 60s and 70s down to early 20s.
So can anyone do it?
Yeah, absolutely. There's people, I've seen photos and I know people who have even tied in a wheelchair.
In a wheelchair?
There are photos online of someone suspended in their wheelchair. It's amazing, and it's fantastic to see the differences that people use and work around. That's one of the things that I think is so important with rope, is being able to work around things and adapt your rope and your skill to your partner.
Some people might not be particularly inclined into the whole being tied up, but might enjoy the dynamics of tying someone up. Like, can you explain to me a bit more? Like, is there roles in this?
The person that ties we call the rigger, and bottom either bunny or model. I prefer to use the term model, has less of a connotation that behind it. But essentially, the rigger has very much of a dominant position in the power exchange. With rope and Shibari, it's very much a DS power exchange of energy. So you're putting out as the person
tying, you're the one in control. You're putting out this massive power sort of energy. And the one that's in the rope is, in a sense, well, they are submitting. They're relinquishing control of their hands, control of their body in most cases, to be able to allow this person to do this. However, that can change from person to person, and it changes, like people swap quite often. One of the big things that we absolutely stress with everything is consent. I mean, there's this massive, like I said, trusting between partners when you're tying it. So it's so important when you're tying, in particular when you're doing proper, we call play scene, pre-negotiation, and talking about what's going to happen, what could happen, what are you okay with, what sort of things do you like.
Can you tell us where we can find you? Where can people go if they don't know where this venue is? Like, what's your social media?
You can find us on the internet at www.shibariadelaide.com or on Instagram and Facebook, Shibari Adelaide. Search that, will come up. And you can find all of our instructors' personal pages through the Instagram and Facebook page on there. Please flick us a message. We're more than happy to help you find somewhere, sort out times, answer any questions that you might have. Yeah, don't be shy. It's not a weird fetish thing that everyone should feel uncomfortable about. The massive thing about it is being open. And one of the things that I absolutely love about Shibari is that openness, that everyone that comes into it is so open-minded and accepting right from the start. It's just got this fantastic culture behind Shibari.
Wavelength, sparking the convos about Adelaide you should be having on Fresh 92.7.
That there was Adrian speaking with Shane from Shibari Adelaide about Japanese rope bondage. Fascinating art form, that.
Such fascinating art form. Something that I found really interesting is that there's Shibari, but there's also Kimbaku, which is the literal translation of tying up with emotion.
Yeah.
So for my friends that have experienced it before, they've said that it's a lot more of an emotional release than just a fetish.
Yeah.
So, you know, when they're suspended up in the air and they're tied up and they're kind of like, they have nothing to do but relax into it, you know, you can get all these emotions coming up, and there can be some crying, there can be some shaking and like an old positive release kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And also just beautiful art.
Yeah.
Like the art of tying the art of rope tying is actually really beautiful, and you can do art installations, and there's so much room of scope in this, which is so cool.
Absolutely. And I mean, you saw it in Berlin, and I mean, it's one of those things that probably is a bit strange to people in Adelaide. Like, everyone in Adelaide knows what pole dancing is, stripping is, that kind of thing. So it used to be taboo. Now they're more widely accessible, more, I guess, normalised. And it'd be cool to see this sort of thing. Like, imagine going to the club and you're dancing, there's just someone up there just hanging up in like rope above you. That would be incredibly cool.
It's pretty mesmerising. And another really incredible thing is that it's super accessible. So the fact that a person in a wheelchair was able to be suspended up there and they're able to kind of like cater to whatever needs you need. It's cool.
It is really cool.
Yeah, I'm intrigued.
Me too. If that interview has perked your interest like Jamie's, you can find out more about Shibari Adelaide at shibariadelaide.com. Anyway, later in the show, we're going to speak with an actual Shibari model. But next, Hamish will be letting you know what the hell has been going on with politics this week. You're listening to Fresh.
Wavelength.
Welcome back to Wavelength. We'll be getting back into our story on Shibari soon, but now let's throw to Hamish to let us know what the hell is going on with politics this week.
What the hell is going on in politics at the moment? Wavelength on Fresh 92.7.
It's been another big week in the world of politics, and it's my job to unpack it all for you. Lucky me. First up, things between Australia and China are really starting to heat up. While this has kind of been the case all year, ever since COVID came onto our shores, this week it all kicked off on Twitter when China's Foreign Ministry spokesman Zhao Lian posted a doctored image of an Australian soldier holding a knife to the throat of an Afghan child, referencing the recent war crimes scandal involving ADF soldiers. ScoMo labelled the tweet repugnant and demanded an apology, but China further turned their noses up at the Prime Minister's outcry and defended the tweet, saying the minister had every right to condemn Australia for allegedly killing Afghan civilians. The escalating tension comes in the wake of harsh tariffs imposed on Australian wine, which in turn are believed to be in retaliation to Scott Morrison's calls into an inquiry of the coronavirus's origin in the Wuhan district. This tweet is just the latest in a series of escalating events between the two nations, and their fractured relationship isn't showing any sign of repair anytime soon. And the controversy surrounding Australian soldiers isn't looking to die down either, with a recent photo surfacing in the media showing a Special Forces operative sculling a beer out of the prosthetic leg of a dead Taliban fighter. The photo has done nothing to help heal the reputation of Australia's Defence Force, which has been criticised for embracing a warrior culture, which may have contributed to an environment where war crimes have allegedly been committed. Also in the news, Peter Dutton has had his request squashed by the High Court to block asylum seekers suing the government for neglect, while also beginning the process for introducing his long-planned and powerful new cyber laws that would allow for Australian police to take over people's online accounts and investigate their search histories. And that's what the hell has been happening in politics this week.
Wavelength, sparking the convos about Adelaide you should be having on Fresh 92.7.
Thank you for that, Hamish. Stay tuned for the rest of our sexy feature on Shibari coming up after the break. But right now, though, you're listening to Fresh 92.7.
Wavelength.
Welcome back to Wavelengths. Before the break, we heard from Shane from Shibari Adelaide about the practice of Japanese rope bondage and where you can get into it in Adelaide.
But we wanted to hear from someone who actually does Shibari. So Adrian spoke with Rachel, a Shibari model, all about the art form.
Wavelength on Fresh 92.7.
After my chat with Shane, I wanted to talk to a Shibari model, so I got in touch with Rachel, aka Lumia Lemae. She's been practicing this art form for a few years now here in Adelaide, as well as circus and pole dancing, and told me all about her experiences with it and how she discovered this exciting new hobby.
What was it that attracted you about it?
Funny story, actually. So I had just left my husband, and as you do, you go to Tinder and you meet people, and that's what I was doing. And I ended up matching with someone, and I found them quite interesting, and I found their Shibari page linked to their Instagram. So I had a look at it, and I didn't realise until sort of after I looked at it, this is what someone does. And this person was tying. He had a lot of the art on his Instagram page. None of it was sexual, but I just thought it was beautiful. So I was pretty fascinated and intrigued by it when I came across it. We ended up developing a pretty meaningful friendship over a few weeks, and due to my curiosity, we established a rope relationship in addition to our friendship, and we started tying together. I was really lucky though, because this person was really informed about rope and the kink scene, and I mean, our rope interaction was purely platonic. There wasn't anything sort of mixed in with that made it confusing. And being in a vulnerable place at the time, I was never made to feel pressure to do anything I wasn't comfortable doing. I mean, and a lot of people do practice it in the bedroom, and neither are right or wrong, whatever reason people want to do Shibari. But yeah, like our interaction was completely different. That was purely platonic. I mean, it was still connected in a way. Like, obviously there is physical contact when you're practicing Shibari, and there's an emotional connection that needs to sort of be established as well, and an ongoing friendship. And it is more of an intimate friendship than just a normal let's go out for lunch.
It's what you say. It's not a relationship in the romantic setting convention, but it is a relationship because you are giving each other trust, like you trust each other.
Yeah, it actually taught me a lot about normalising different ways in which we can interact with people. I think I went into, previous to Shibari and previous to entering the rope scene, I was very sort of small-minded, thinking that a lot of guy friends, or so it had to be some sort of romantic interest or something, and it was either sectioned off into just friends, or they were just romantic, or if that makes sense. Even things like hugging or cuddling with someone, and just laying there cuddling with someone and human touch, none of that needs to be sexual, none of that needs to be romantic, and for me, Shibari really normalised that.
You also do circus and other things. Was Shibari just like the next step for you?
It's actually the other way around. So,
oh, really?
Yeah. So I started circus after I started Shibari because I liked the feeling of there's a free feeling sort of being suspended in the air, whether or not that's you being responsible for your well-being and your safety, or if that's another person being responsible for your well-being and safety. So the circus stuff started with the aerial stuff. That all started after Shibari, really, because I really identified with that freeness of being in the air. It felt really natural to me.
Would you consider it to be an art form or a fetish?
It's both. It's either. I mean, people tie for all sorts of reasons. Some people link their sexual gratification to their Shibari practices, and that's totally fine. Some people don't actually connect their sexual gratification. They don't incorporate that into their bedroom at all, and they use it as an art form. If you look at artists like Kanoko, who uses epic rope art installations, he takes these massive, he'll build these massive webs and have just it's beautiful. Like you have to look at his Instagram page and have a look at it. You look at that and you will definitely say that is art. You wouldn't say that that's a kink or a fetish. You know, people like me and one of my rope partners, Copytime's Rope, who we do live performances at festivals, that you wouldn't consider to be fetish. That's
not
art.
at all.
It as an art form is being widely appreciated a lot more. You know, we're being very open about it on our social media pages. You know, we talk about it, we invite open discussion. You know, if people are curious or if people are concerned, we're here. We love to talk about it. We love to sort of talk people through it. For instance, when we performed at a recent festival, it was funny, there was a couple of younger girls around who didn't realise that, you know, we go into a bit of a blissy state when we've been tied, depending on, you know, the type of tie that we do. And it was the end of the tie and I got brought down from the suspension and I was just sort of laying there in a puddle of bliss. And the girls thought that I needed an ambulance because they thought I'd passed out. So,
did they call an ambulance?
No ambulance got called, but they were really concerned, which was lovely. But, you know, all it takes is that discussion and that's another person informed.
In terms of you personally, how does it make you feel? What do you get from it?
Okay, so it really depends on the nature of the tie. So a lot of the time I'm a bit of a masochist, to be honest. I like pain. I have a good relationship with pain. I like being able to put myself in situations that really test my limits and push me past my limits. So, I mean, it's just like that. Same thing as jogging. You know, people will run marathons because it's pushing their limits. It's exactly the same sort of concept. I like looking back on the shapes that can be made. I like sort of reflecting on how I was feeling at the time. But the biggest thing that I get from rope, and a lot of people can relate to this as well, is that feeling of meditation. So a lot of the time you do have to focus a lot on your breathing. You have to really be able to control your mind, you know, especially for people who can be anxious people. Yeah, you have to have that. You have to really draw deep into yourself. And you end up forgetting what, you know, you push everything out that's going on around you. You know, you can become oblivious to the noise in your head. You become oblivious to the noise in the room. It's a really nice, beautiful opportunity to just sort of in your body. For me, in terms of like a transformational sort of gain that I've had from it, like I feel like I've opened up as a person, and I've opened up like my sexuality as well has opened up, even though I haven't really connected them both together. It's made me a very open person. Because it's normalised a lot of the things that I thought was so taboo before, and I'm so comfortable about talking about things that, you know, other people think are taboo, and I think that's a massive sort of step forward, and I think a lot of other people do gain that as well.
Have you received any bad criticism over practicing Shibari?
I wouldn't say any bad criticism, and not me personally. I think the only feedback I've had that hasn't been encouraging has just been that it's not really their thing, and they don't understand it, and they're not really interested in it, and it's been, you know, a respectful conversation that I've had with people before. I do know of some people who have, you know, there's a bit of controversy around public tying because people think that, you know, public tying could trigger people who have had past traumas to do with, you know, being restricted in some sort of way, which I can guess, I can understand, but in saying that, you know, we don't turn the TV off when the news triggers us. I mean, we turn the TV off when the news triggers us. We don't say, no, we can't watch that. You can't play that on TV. We remove ourselves from that situation. And the reason I think that we do really need to push to normalise it is because there are people who don't do the right thing. There are people who abuse their power. You know, there are people that go into the scene as rope bottoms without any sort of prior knowledge. They don't have people to turn to. They don't know how to talk about it. They don't know what the expectations are from them, what their rights are. They don't understand consent. You know, this culture isn't built within them. And they don't have access to any education. So by keeping it underground and not doing it and normalising it, you know, bad things are still going to happen within the scene. Yeah, so I think just, you know, keeping these conversations open and being analytical, reflective, descriptive about your experiences.
Absolutely.
And opening discussion is really important.
Can you please let me know where can our listeners find you on Instagram, socials or whatever, or if they want to book you for a performance or something?
So my Instagram handle is Lumia Lemae, so it's spelled LUMIALEMAE.
Wavelength, sparking the convos about Adelaide you should be having on Fresh 92.7.
That was Adrian speaking with Rachel, a Shibari model, about the Japanese rope bondage art form. Pretty great insight there from a former circus performer to doing Shibari.
It's crazy how similar they are in some ways, where it's being suspended up, and she was saying that she started off doing circus and then kind of like the feeling of being suspended in the air during like aerial circus kind of stuff. And then that's kind of how it led her to the Shibari path. But the things of how freeing it is. She said something about breath control and like tapping into that. So I'm sure it's a form of meditation for a lot of these people where it's really tapping into your own body and your own breath and like gaining control in a situation where you don't have control.
Yeah, that's such a strange thing to say, that being tied up, can't move, suspended from the roof is freeing, but like I can see it though.
Yeah, I can totally understand it. It seems really, really intriguing, and how, again, just bringing it back to the thing that it doesn't have to be a fetish, it can be an art form, and it can be both.
And it totally is. Like, I mean, just looking at her Instagram before, looking at Shibari Adelaide's Instagram, like, it's amazing what they do. It's just incredible how they can just contort the human body like that. And it is just spectacular to look at. I can imagine it's even more spectacular in person.
Yeah, if anyone's curious, check out Shibari Adelaide's Instagram, because there are some absolutely incredible photos on here. We've just been sussing through it. But yeah, just like beautiful. And yeah, the poses that these people are doing of their bodies, I wonder how long they stay up for. Is what I want to know. Like, how long, like, what if you need to pee? Or you've got like a scratch? Like, what happens?
And the thing she said at the end, which I think is really important that I reckon we should totally touch on, is that it's good that we're having this conversation because it brings it to the mainstream. It makes these things more accessible, because there's totally the chance that you could just, an amateur, go in and try and do this to yourself and potentially really hurt someone. You could cut off their circulation, you could stop their breathing. These things aren't meant to be done by amateurs.
No.
So if you are interested in getting involved in this stuff and learning about it, a great way to go about it is to join Shibari Adelaide. They've got these weekly
courses.
Sessions,
for beginners. There's some for intermediates, mediates. There's workshops. They have social rope bondage nights. My friend actually went to one a couple of weeks ago. He went on a first date and he said that the girl suggested they go to this social rope bonding thing, and he was like, oh yeah, all right, and then rocked up at this place, and he came back and he was like, whoa, mind blown. Like, taking her out for dinner number 2.
I mean, if you're a skeptic, maybe head along, and if you're interested, obviously just hearing this story, I mean, there's a place in Adelaide for you to try it out.
If you're curious, give it a go and just do it with professionals and do it in a safe environment, you know?
Don't try this at home if you've never done it before, please. I don't want to be responsible for any Shibari
Fresh is not responsible for any of the injuries that come out of this session.
Anyway, next, Wavelength explains everything you need to know about what's happened with the coronavirus this week. But right now, you're listening to Fresh.
Wavelength.
Welcome back to Wavelength, sparking the convos about Adelaide you should be having.
Right now, we're getting into our weekly segment where Wavelength explains what has happened with coronavirus this week.
Wavelength on Fresh 92.7.
Here we are again, another round of the latest COVID-19 news, so let's dive right in. First up this week, let's explore the Parafield cluster. At time of recording, we've gone 8 days without a new case, even despite a man testing positive after going on a shopping run right around Adelaide. SA Health said the man had breached quarantine to go shopping, however by Monday issued an apology saying he'd never been told to remain in quarantine and that he'd actually done nothing wrong. This man was a casual contact of a case at Flinders University Sturt campus. Meanwhile, to the Woodfield situation, the man at the centre of the alleged lie which sent us into lockdown for 3 days is also reportedly considering options to sue the government for defamation. That's despite not being publicly identified. Police say there's insufficient evidence to charge the Spanish national after SA Health refused to share information they gained through interviewing the man. This, they say, is due to wanting to protect the man's confidentiality. The Premier, however, has refused to back down, saying the individual gave false and misleading information. And to wrap up the latest here in SA, police have overruled SA Health in relaxing hospitality restrictions amid pressure from business owners. The relaxed rules include 1 person per 2 square metres. A change Professor Nicholas Berry says she would have preferred to be in place for a while longer. But while the rules have been relaxed, the Police Commissioner says the uptake of people scanning QR codes in businesses is encouraging. After all that, well, let's turn overseas, where the coronavirus situation continues to worsen, particularly in the US. The so-called greatest country in the world just recorded over 228,000 cases in a single day, while 2,800 people died just on Wednesday. President-elect Joe Biden says he'll ask people to wear a mask for the first 100 days of his presidency to help curb the virus. But finally, it seems there's some hope on the horizon. Britain is planning to roll out the Pfizer vaccine this week, firstly targeting healthcare workers and the elderly. Here in Australia, we're still vetting that vaccine, but all going well, the government says we're likely to start receiving it by March. So while we wait, you should still be on high alert, get tested if you have any symptoms whatsoever, mask up if you're in close contact areas, and remember, tune in next week for another wrap-up of COVID-19 news.
Wavelength. Sparking the convos about Adelaide you should be having on Fresh 92.7.
That there was Andrew letting you know everything you need to know about the coronavirus this week.
You're listening to Fresh 92.7.
Wavelength.
Welcome back to Wavelength with David and Jamie this evening, sparking the conversations about Adelaide you should be having.
Right now, we've got our weekly segment called Heaps Good News. This week, Hamish has got the goods for us.
I know there's gonna be
Heaps Good News on Wavelength.
Well, it's officially December, which means it's almost time to say goodbye to the year that's been 2020. Let us never speak of it again. Now, while that alone is quite the cause for celebration, there's also been a couple of other stories to make you smile this week, even if that smile is hiding a wealth of repressed emotional issues. First up, Kelvin, also known as the world's loneliest elephant, has finally found a new home and has already made some mates. On you, Kelvin. The pachyderm was in the headlines earlier this year when a judge in Pakistan's High Court ruled that Kelvin was to be relocated from his cruel and isolated captivity in an Islamabad zoo where he hadn't had contact with another elephant in 8 years. Kelvin was then shipped to a wildlife sanctuary in Cambodia where he finally came face to face with another member of his species. The moment the two mammals met for the first time was captured on film, and as you'd expect, it's pretty heartwarming. After a long and arduous public campaign to secure Kelvin's freedom, led by pop superstar Cher, the gentle giant now has a chance at living a normal life, among others of his kind, and far away from any chains or shackles, unless some of the female elephants are into that kind of thing. And one woman is determined to prove that not all of us are bad. Star from Mr. Toy's Toy World in the Gold Coast this week reported that one Good Samaritan who wished to remain anonymous had walked in and just paid off $16,000 worth of Christmas presents put on lay-by. The unidentified woman simply said she made the kind gesture because 2020 had been such a rough year for everyone. Now, if I could just get in contact with this lovely lady, I've got an $8,000 phone bill that needs to be paid off. Sounds like it's well within her budget, and this is why she's anonymous. And finally, here's some news that is guaranteed to get the blood flowing. I hope you're sitting down for this, not just because it's still a legal requirement in most states depending on the venue, but because this is really good news. Adelaide is finally set to see some much needed live music make its way back to our shores with announcement of the absolutely massive Summer Sounds Festival announced over the week. Determined to end the year on an ultimate high and set the mood for 2021, Summer Sounds will bring in the new year with a whole month of music, held at Benithan Park, spread across 20 days, headlined by some of the biggest Oz music acts. The festival will feature the likes of Timmy Trumpet, Bernard Fanning,
I just wanna wish you well.
Cosmo's Midnight,
We can keep it low key, ayy. Low, low, keep it low, low, low.
Spacey Jane, and a whole lot more. The event has the full backing of our good mates at SA Health in what could be a taste of things to come, with festival goers set to be separated in pods. Trust me, it's a lot more humane than it sounds. Basically, you and a couple of mates will get your own sectioned off area with chairs, a table, a cooler for your drinks, and the option to pre-book some bevies. Wait, this actually sounds even better than the usual get-up at a gig. So we get a VIP experience. I don't have to share my sweat with a guy that would have beat me up in high school. Everyone stays safe, and dancing's also on the cards. Hey, even when COVID is under control, maybe everything shouldn't go back to the way it was before. And that's all the good news I've got for you this week, so hopefully that's lifted your spirits for now. Otherwise, there's always actual spirits that can do that for you.
Wavelength, sparking the convos about Adelaide you should be having on Fresh 92.7.
Thank you for that, Hamish. Anyway, that brings us to the end of our sexy Wavelength episode for the week. I hope we made your Monday evening a little bit steamier.
Make sure you've subscribed to the Wavelength podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere else you get your podcasts. You can listen back to our old episodes right now, and you'll be the first to know when tonight's episodes goes up.
Well, wasn't that an episode, Jamie? Thank you so much for joining me this evening. It's been fantastic being back in the studio. It's been a while.
I know, I missed it. I missed looking at your face. I missed talking to the microphone. Oh, God.
It's fantastic. Thank you so much for listening tonight. Adelaide will be back next week. Stay safe and have a great week.
Wavelength.
Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award winning Ozcast network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast.
Ozcast.
Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.